Mascot horror is strange to me. If you're unfamiliar with the term, I'd best explain it as horror media, usually games, made explicitly with the intention to go viral and sell merchandise of their mascot characters. Think Five Nights at Freddy's, Bendy the Ink Machine, Poppy Playtime, and Garten of Banban. That one's the scariest of all of them. You can also broaden the term to be viral horror, which then would include games like Amnesia and Slender, but I'd like to just focus on mascot horror here. If my definition earlier didn't make sense to you, think of it this way. Mascot horror is Let's Player or game theory baits. You remember how Hello Neighbor constantly tried to get MatPat's attention on Twitter a few years back? That's exactly what I'm referring to with game theory baits. Don't get the wrong idea though, a game trying to garner attention towards itself isn't bad, and a game having a specific audience or goal in mind isn't bad either. This is just a trend I've noticed with these kinds of games. Now, why exactly do I find mascot horror to be strange? I'll tell you now, it's not because of the games. I was there when Five Nights at Freddy's 1 came out. I'm no stranger to the genre. I find mascot horror to be strange because of it being seen as horror for kids, when nothing requires it to be that. Sure, there's a lot of mascot horror games made explicitly to sell merch to kids, like Banban, Poppy Playtime, and Bendy, but it didn't start out this way. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is what I would consider to be the first true mascot horror game, and while I did have my FNAF phase as a kid, I don't consider it to be a kid's game. The later games of the franchise absolutely are, but FNAF 1 is different. To me, FNAF 1 has always felt like it was an actual horror game first, mascot horror game second. Unlike something like Bendy, or even the later FNAF games, I don't feel like the goal of the game is to make me familiar with these characters so I buy merch of them. I feel like the goal is to be an actual horror game. Are there still mascots? Yes. Is it still arguably horror for kids? Yeah, sure. But is Five Nights at Freddy's, at least in its first outing, still a proper horror game? I think it is. I'm going over all this stuff on what mascot horror is, and my feelings on it, because I want to take the time tonight to tell you about an often forgotten mascot horror game, which not only do I consider to be the best of the genre, but I consider it to be a prime example of why its shift into being just horror for kids is strange to me. You've already read the title, so I won't waste your time any longer. Let's talk about Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. Released back in 2014, the same year as FNAF 1, by Lag Studios, Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is a horror game where you travel through 1,000 randomly generated rooms full of monsters and a love for the horror genre. I'll obviously be going over this more in detail when we get into the game proper, but each of the game's monsters are pretty clear references to other pieces of media, which is why I struggle to even call it mascot horror in the first place. Its only true mascot is the titular Spooky, who serves as more comic relief than anything, and all of the horror is played completely straight, and it's done pretty well in my opinion. I understand that you might need some more convincing though. I mean, how could a game with this face in it possibly be scary? Hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll understand. But before we get into that, if you end up enjoying this video, please do leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps me out. With that out of the way, let's start up the game and see just why exactly Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is such a great love letter to the horror genre. After a short intro cutscene, the game starts with the choice of 4, technically 5 but one isn't available yet, game modes. I'll be starting with the mansion since that's the main mode, but afterwards I'll go over the other 3. Starting the game proper, the titular Spooky appears, tasking us to make it through the 1,000 rooms of the mansion to see what's at the end.
Or is there even an end? I don't really know. Anyway, just go.
Gameplay-wise, Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is really simple. Just walk through the randomly generated room and open the door to the next one. There is some scripted stuff later, but for now, that's it. While the gameplay can get a bit repetitive, I do think the game does a great job spicing things up later, and the atmosphere present throughout the game helps it from getting monotonous as well. I'll go over this more much later in the video, but this game has a great spooky atmosphere, which makes it so that you never truly feel safe, even when there's nothing actually happening. Ominous ambient music, dark halls making it hard to see what's in front of you, creepy paintings, and the simplistic art style all lend themselves quite well to making the game, well, spooky, and that's definitely the game's strongest suit. If you can't tell, I'm talking about the atmosphere of the game now because there's nothing else for me to cover. Sure, there's notes chronicling the journey of some romantic guy who entered the mansion before us, but that's about it. At least until room 24. This is where the first jump scare happens, and I think I'll let it speak for itself. As you can tell, it was really scary. I'm going to get this out of the way now. This is pretty much the only actual jump scare in the game. There's a couple more later, but this is the main one you're going to be seeing throughout the game. A cardboard cutout. Nothing else interesting happened to me until room 50, where I got to the first save points. This room was an elevator taking me deeper into the mansion, though the next floor wasn't anything interesting. That is, until room 60. There was a weird green puddle in the middle of the room, and a table with a note on it, reading as follows. Spouting, splashing, soaking, innards, ingest, invoking, nailing, never stops the choking. Right after reading that, a scary goop man started chasing me as the first real enemy encounter. I lied earlier when I said the main gameplay loop was walking between randomly generated rooms, because in reality, you're doing that while being chased by monsters known as specimens. This one is Specimen 2, an extremely slow slime monster that tries to slow down the player with puddles. I never really had any issue with this guy. He's easy to avoid and just kinda serves as a tutorial enemy. However, despite being easy, I actually really enjoy Goop. I'm gonna be giving all the enemies names, by the way, partially due to his reference, and partially due to how he looks and sounds. Even though he's an easy enemy, he still looks and especially sounds creepy, making constant choking sounds as he chases you. Speaking of chasing, Goop stopped chasing me after room 71, though he did eventually reappear at room 90 up until room 100 when I got to the next save points. The next 100 rooms are a bit different visually, having a brown and moldy look to them, and there's some new rooms with bridges, though they're not much different gameplay-wise. At room 106, I got chased by Goop again, though this time his chase music didn't play, which was kinda weird. Nothing else of note happened until room 120, where the scenery changed to an underground lab called GL Labs, and I needed to open up a locked door to progress. This is done by entering another door, passing by some tanks, one of them being broken, and reading another note talking about Subject 5. There's also a keycard here, which we can use to unlock the locked door, and behind it lies a room with a strange hole in the ceiling, alongside another note, confirming that Subject 5 escaped, and that there's clicking coming from the ceiling. Coincidentally, Specimen 3 comes crawling out of the ceiling right after, and it starts to chase us. Specimen 3, or Subject 5, doesn't really have a crazy gimmick or anything, and honestly, I find it to be one of the least scary specimens, alongside Goop and one of the later specimens, but it is the most dangerous specimen so far. It can crawl into holes in the ceiling for an ambush, and is much faster than Goop. Design-wise, it's a big brown centipede spider hybrid. Despite my general fear and dislike of spiders, I'm not really scared by it. Maybe it's just because of how easy it is to deal with, maybe it's because of how generic the design is, but I don't know, I'm not really scared by this thing. Specimen 3, or Centipede as I'm going to call it, chased me until room 134, and it wasn't until room 147 that something else interesting happens. I was taken to this foggy room, which is a direct reference to the Lost Woods from Ocarina of Time, requiring us to find the correct path forward by following the dings appearing on screen. This room reappears throughout the game, and every time the layout is randomized, so you can't just brute force it. Thankfully, it is safe, plus it doesn't take too long to get through, so it's not a huge issue. And, in fact, I actually quite like this room. It's rare enough to avoid being possibly annoying, and I like the slight change in gameplay. Spookies has a lot of safe rooms like this, mostly appearing later in the game, and they're some of my favorite rooms in the game. Room 150 was another elevator save room, and in room 152, I got chased by Goop again. Thankfully he went away pretty quick, as room 160 puts us in another scenery change, this time an abandoned Japanese school. This setting continues on for the next few rooms, which are completely dark aside from the flashlight that spontaneously appears for these rooms. Room 162 had some extra classrooms for me to enter, and one of them had a note inside, which was almost impossible to read due to the darkness. But I was able to make it out. Matsuri never made it to class today. I hope she made it home okay. This continued into another note that I found in a separate room. Could it really be true? I thought the fairy tales about the ghost who eats children who sneak in after class was just to keep us from disobeying. But Matsuri is still missing. Like the centipede earlier, these notes are teasing Specimen 4, who I'll get to in just a second. I want to just really quick praise the atmosphere of this game again, as this area had me genuinely creeped out because of how different it was from the rest of the game, at least up to this point. I think it's the combination of the darkness and the school setting that did it for me, and I have a hard time deciding if this area, or a later Specimen's area, was the scariest to me. More about that later though. Specimen 4, as the note suggested, is a ghost girl who is very obviously inspired by The Ring. So inspired, in fact, that her somewhat official name is Ringu. Ringu was the scariest specimen to me, at least up to this point, and that's for one simple reason: the chase music. It sounds almost like a chiptune lullaby, which I found to be very fitting, especially after learning what the specimen's stats screen was. And for some reason when I heard this song, I assumed that Ringu was going to instantly kill me if I got too close. I don't know why I thought this, since there was literally nothing in the game to support this. But I did. Ringu is pretty easy to avoid though, as although she can float through walls, she's pretty slow and takes a while to actually attack you. As long as you keep running, you'll be fine, which is pretty much how every specimen is dealt with. I've avoided bringing this up until now, but this game is really easy. Now, I did die to one specimen much later in the game, and that was because it went against my run away from everything and don't look at what's chasing you mindset. Still though, for the most part, the enemies are really easy to avoid, and once you realize this, the game becomes a lot less scary. I did still manage to find the enemies to be creepy both visually and audio-wise, but that can only carry them so far. Ringu eventually stopped chasing me at room 179, and nothing noteworthy happened until room 187, when I found this room with an office setup, complete with a fan and a phone.
Hello? Yes. Hello?
Room 200 was another safe room, and the rooms that followed weren't anything interesting either. They looked different, having a more gray, dilapidated look to them, but still, nothing too interesting. That is, until room 210, where I was transported to an abandoned factory that looked straight out of Silent Hill. I've not really hidden this fact in my videos, but I'm a big Silent Hill fan, so it should come as no surprise that this is one of my favorite areas in the game. It nails the Silent Hill aesthetic, complete with fog, a weird uterus room that I didn't see in my playthrough, and notes talking about a cult and its mother. There's also a room that looks like it has Han Solo trapped behind bars. Going back to the notes for a second, they talk about appeasing the darkness via rituals, one of which involved an unpure girl. We never do find out what exactly this was referring to, since outside of the specimen introductions, we never see any more lore about them. This is just my theory, but I believe that the darkness is the one who created Specimen 5, who we'll see in a moment, and the unpure girl was transformed into the specimen. It's also possible that the mother the cult mentions is the specimen, but there's no more evidence to support that than there is for my theory. Anyway, I eventually entered room 213, where Specimen 5 appeared for the first time. This is Bab, as she's known in the files, though I'm just going to call her the nurse because that's what I referred to as during my playthrough. She looks like a strange mix of a bubblehead nurse, a mannequin, and Pyramid Head, all from Silent Hill 2, and is by far the most dangerous specimen we've encountered up to this point. Every other one was able to kill us in 3 hits, but the nurse can kill us in 2. Thankfully, she's really slow to compensate this, but she does more than just chase you. The nurse will create hallucinations, which change the texture of the walls, though honestly they don't really do much aside from slightly disorienting you. And even then, I was able to tune them out pretty quick. Overall though, Specimen 5 is one of my favorites. I love its design, its theme, its possible lore. It's just a bit lackluster gameplay wise. The nurse stopped chasing me at room 224, and the only other noteworthy thing that happens was in room 239, where I found this brain in a jar. I wasn't able to do anything with it though, so I just moved on. Immediately after this I got chased by Ringu again, but at room 250, I reached another save room.
I shall grant you a gift for your progress. So just keep going.
Alongside the save points, we're given a gift. He's right behind me, isn't he? The next few rooms weren't anything noteworthy, but in room 256, I found some arcade cabinets. One was out of order, and I never got it working, but the other 3 let us play some fun mini-games starring Spooky. One where you kill Pac-Man, one where you kill people in a mall and go faster and faster, and a racing game where you crash into people on purpose. That last one sounds like my average drive to work. Aside from that, there's nothing more to do here, and the next few rooms were uninteresting. But in room 271, I found this strange red machine called the Cat DOS. This lets us read up on all the specimens encountered so far, and it might be my favorite room in the whole game. It's another safe room like the Lost Woods and arcade rooms, though the ominous lighting and ambience from the Cat DOS itself makes it still feel unsafe, even though it is safe. I was only able to read up on the first 6 specimens, despite not encountering the 6th yet, though I didn't learn much new information. Just a bit more context on where exactly the specimens came from, what methods they used to kill you, and how many they've killed. Interesting stuff, but nothing crazy. Immediately after leaving this room, I got chased by the centipede again, but nothing else of note happened for the rest of the 200s. Now that we're at room 300, the safe rooms are only going to start appearing every 100 rooms instead of 50 rooms. Not much else changes aside from that though, but the rooms are now made of some brown bricks. In room 303 I encountered the Cat DOS again, though this time I was able to read up on specimens 7 and 8. After this, nothing else of note happened until room 310. This room looks very different from anything else so far, looking like it's straight out of one of the N64 Zelda games. This room has a key, some masks on the walls, and some notes which we can read. These notes contain the story of a merchant who sold his puppets to children, though he later drowned after the jealous townspeople threw his puppets in the river. Using the key I found, I entered the locked room and found another room with a key and more notes. These notes say that the children the merchant once sold his puppets to started going missing, and the townspeople began to find puppets that looked just like them. I then used the second key to unlock a door, which looked suspiciously like a Zelda boss door, and by this point the reference for the specimen should be obvious. Specimen 6 is a very clear homage to both Majora's Mask and the Ben Drowned creepypasta based on the aforementioned game. He resembles the Happy Mask salesman, and gameplay-wise, he's SCP-173, or a Weeping Angel, whatever you prefer. Basically, if you want to avoid getting stabbed to death, you need to keep your eye on Ben here, as otherwise he'll kill you. Now, this is something that I knew going in, as I'd watched a Let's Play of this game around when it came out, but this is still one of my favorite specimens. At least gameplay-wise. There is one other specimen that I like the gameplay of more, but we'll get to that later. If you've played Spookies before, when I said there was a specimen that killed me because it went against my run away from everything playstyle, there's a decent chance that you may have thought I was talking about Ben. But no, he never killed me. He came close once, but because you can just sit still and let your health regenerate so long as you're looking at him, I didn't die. In fact, despite the fact that Ben is one of the specimens that slow down gameplay, I never found myself annoyed when he appeared. His gimmick requires you to either keep looking behind you, or run through rooms backwards, which is a big enough difference to make him interesting, while not making him annoying like some of the later specimens. Ben eventually left me alone in room 325, though he chased me again like 4 times after this. Aside from the constant chases, nothing else interesting happened until room 368, where I found a note from a guy who was knowledgeable about horror tropes, so maybe he made it out alive. Later on in room 394, I found a weird looping hallway with a static overlay, and while I thought at first this meant the nurse was chasing me, it's actually something else. This room was an homage to PT, not even the only one in this game, requiring us to loop around the hallway and read a note to leave. Although it seems cryptic at first, upon rereading the note now, I think it's supposed to be how the game's creator, Akuma Kira, felt about PT and its cancellation. There's also a really cheap and honestly kinda shitty jump scare in this room, but it's really nothing special. Onto the 400s. Room 400 was another safe elevator room, though this time there was a skeleton holding a quill, who was the romantic guy from the notes earlier. Skipping to room 406, we can see some text on the floor which reads Threshold of Consciousness. I prepared myself for some weird psychology monster, but instead, I was met with a cat.
Well, hello there. Are you lost, little one? This place can help those who are ready, but expect turmoil more than you are used to.
After talking to the cat, we can continue onwards, re-entering the normal mansion. A few rooms later, we're back to the clock room, though we can open this side door which brings us to a pink and yellow room containing some weird worms and the cat.
2 sides of the same coin. Knowing your projections can help you achieve freedom.
After some more rooms, we re-enter the clock and talk to the cat once more, this time in an office room.
The mask you wear serves its purpose well, but be careful not to lose yourself in it.
There's also a red computer in this room, which says, "Be who you are to others," amongst other very Jungian text. For the last time, after a couple rooms, we re-enter the clock and enter a side room, this one appearing quite space-like.
Balance is the key to keeping your mind free and sane.
Exiting this room brings us to a bloody hallway with an ominous metal door, and entering that does not bring us to the next specimen. Instead, we talk to the cats one final time.
Knowing your shadow can greatly help you, but be ready to see what you'd rather not be.
After this, we enter a strange red hallway, and are finally brought to the Specimen 7 chase at room 423. I don't know what to make of Specimen 7. It's the only specimen to never re-chase the player, and it's also easily the most original specimen in the game, having no clear reference outside of maybe Earthbound. It does look a lot like Gygus, and the Spookies wiki claims the presentation of the lead-up is similar to Earthbound. I don't know if that's true or not because I've never played Earthbound. Personally, I found Specimen 7 to be much more similar in concept and execution to Yume Nikki, though maybe that's just the Yume Nikki fan in me trying to tie anything I like to Yume Nikki. Or maybe there is actually some inspiration there, I don't know. Specifically, this felt very much in line with what I believe a lot of Yume Nikki represents, that being the trauma of its main character. And design-wise, Specimen 7 also felt slightly like Uboa in face. Obviously they don't really look similar, but I get the same sort of vibe from those Yume Nikki characters as I do from Specimen 7. All I can definitively say about Specimen 7 is that it is not a Terraria reference. And I don't really like it. I like the idea of it, as it's a weird Gygas-inspired Jungian psychology monster, but the execution isn't great. It's super slow to make up for the fact that it can instantly kill you, and I never had any issue escaping it. The lead up is really the best part, as I thought all the theming around Jungian persona and shadow psychology to be an interesting concept for a monster, but that's seriously all Specimen 7 has going for it. I can't even be bothered to give this one a proper name, as, again, it doesn't even reappear. I get why it doesn't, as it would be thematically inappropriate for it to reappear, but I don't know. As it stands, I just found Specimen 7 kind of lame. Skipping ahead to room 334, Specimen 7 stopped chasing me, and nothing else interesting happens, aside from encountering the centipede twice, and goop immediately after the second chase with the centipede ended. I did also find this weird map room in room 494, showing that the mansion is constantly shifting around, but that was it for the 400s, as well as for the first half of the game. Up to this point, I was enjoying myself quite a bit. I found the monster designs to be fun references, while being some genuinely great designs at their own rights, and while the gameplay was repetitive, I was still enjoying it. I really can't stress enough how much of that is due to the atmosphere of the game, as it really does a good job of keeping you on edge, even when nothing is actually happening. This is partially why I can't in good conscience call Spookies just a mascot horror game, as there's really so much more going on here. It's the same as FNAF 1 to me. There may be some mascots that could be easily merchandisable, but that's not the point. The point is to be a genuine horror game, and I think, up to this point, Spookies is succeeding quite well. We'll see how well it continues, right after this break. Room 500 is the next save room, and Spooky reappears to congratulate us.
Well, here you are, alive and still here. You just keep on going, don't you? Well, the next door has been fixed up for you, so enjoy and keep moving on.
We can now enter the fixed door, sending us all the way back to room 50. Now, if you couldn't tell, every time Spooky appears she does a little bit of trolling. But removing almost all of the progress up to this point is absurd. Is what I would say if this was real, but after a couple rooms the number fixes itself and we're brought back to the 500s. Nothing of note really happened after this aside from getting chased by the nurse, that is, until room 550, where I found myself in an outdoors forest area. 551 was an indoor cabin, and given that every specimen so far had either been a movie or game reference, I fully expected this upcoming specimen to be based on Evil Dead, given the cabin in the woods setting. Unfortunately, I was wrong, but this is still one of my favorite specimens in the game. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. In room 551, I found a note from someone who was here before us. For a while I thought I had escaped this place, but despite the trees and flora, I think this is actually just another room. I did, however, find deer, so I might at least get to eat. In the next room we can see what the note was talking about, as there's some deer, though they seem a bit violent. Room 553 had another note talking about the deer, and in room 554, I found an axe, which we can use as a weapon to kill some specimens. Now, I didn't use the axe much, as I was already aware that using it too much locks you into getting the bad ending. But more on that later. For now, all that's important is the axe is decently useful, but you can easily get through the game without using it. Room 555 had more deer, which I killed, causing some sort of evil deer creature to flash onto my screen. 556 had more deer, which almost killed me, and 557 was one last cabin, and the introduction of the next specimen. After getting a key in one of the unlocked rooms, I entered a room with a creepy record player, which was supposed to jump scare me, but I happened to turn around right as the jump scare occurred, so I didn't see it. Sure as hell heard it though, and trust me, it was loud. Using the key I found, I unlocked the door leading into a long hallway, and came face to face with the next specimen. This is Specimen 8, or the Deer Lord. And I'm just going to be upfront, this is the best specimen in the game, at least visually. It's an absolute shame that I only encountered him once, because I love the Deer Lord. His design is creepy, being a large, imposing skeletal deer-like creature, and when he gets close to you, his cloak opens up revealing the souls of his previous victims. The chase theme is creepy, yet a bit somber, with record scratching present over it, and it's one of the best in the game, in the voice. Oh my god, the voice.
Join us. Why do you run, child?
For those of you who haven't caught on to the reference yet, Deer Lord is based on the beast from Over the Garden Wall, a fantastic show which you should watch, and I think the reference is done spectacularly. Deer Lord is a clear homage to the beast, yet it remains as a distinct entity in my mind, since it's not just a one-to-one copy. Unfortunately for the Deer Lord though, I found his gameplay to be boring. Now, this is because I somehow never encountered his main gimmick, phasing through walls between him and the player, but that's his only interesting gameplay mechanic. Aside from that, he flashes images on screen when he hits the player, and there's a subtle static overlay that appears when he chases you. I still think presentation-wise, Deer Lord is absolutely fantastic, and is one of, if not the best enemy in the game, but gameplay-wise he's disappointing. Don't worry though, despite this being the only time he chased me in the main game, this isn't the last we'll see of the Deer Lord. The rest of the 500s were uneventful, until I entered room 589, where I found the cat DOS again, and was able to read up on all the specimens up to Specimen 9. Who is not the next specimen? I'm going to just say this now, Specimen 9 is like Specimen 1, where he can appear anywhere in the game, though he does have his own unique area at the end, so I'll cover him then. I do think he's a cool enemy though, it's just unfortunate that I never encountered him until the ending. I do also want to mention that Specimen 5 and 7 are mentioned to work particularly well on subjects with past trauma or psychological issues, and given that they work on the protagonists, our history enthusiast seems to have a bit of a dark past. I'll leave whatever that past is to you though, because there's nothing in-game that suggests what that past could be. Specimen 8 is also mentioned to be more effective on violent subjects, but more on that later. The rest of the 500s were uneventful, aside from another centipede chase, so onto the 600s. The 600s were my least favorite part of the game. It has the worst room design, having these ugly, long, beige rooms that make dealing with the next enemy a pain in the ass. It has my least favorite specimen in the game, and the only one that killed me in my playthrough. But that specimen also has the best build-up in the game. As usual, the 10th room of the floor is a scenery change. This time a dark sci-fi laboratory, which I immediately thought looked like the USG Ishimura from Dead Space. Like Ringu's intro, this area is dark, only lit up by a flashlight. However, because the notes are holograms, they're actually readable, and they tell us that even though it's much more high-tech, this is the old GL Labs. Yeah, remember GL Labs from Specimen 3's introduction? Don't worry, I forgot about them too. Just keep GL Labs in mind for the DLC later. After turning on the power and walking through some hallways, the power goes out again, forcing us to go inside a bloody vent. Now, I don't have claustrophobia, but I do not do well with cramped spaces in horror games. I always feel like there's going to be something in the vent with me, and this time, I was right. After using the axe to destroy some weird fleshy stuff blocking the way forward, I exited the vents and read another note. Spooky just said there were things we needed to salvage from this place. I'm starting to worry that a loose specimen may be included in the list of things for us to retrieve. The power just shut off again. Is everything broken in here? After getting in another vent, I found a new note. I don't know what to do. I can't think well. I feel strange. I'm hiding from that thing. I feel like something is growing on my skin. I can't seem to tear it off fast enough, and I'm losing a lot of blood. Exiting the vents, I found one final note in a pile of blood. You have to keep it close. It becomes something else when it gets too far away. Something I can't outrun. Keep that last part in mind, because I sure as hell didn't, as after resetting the power, a strange eel-like creature pops out of the vent, only to get alien chestburstered and replaced with the real Specimen 10, the Thing. I really don't like Specimen 10. I think its design is boring, as although I like the kind of melted human look it initially has, it very quickly gets replaced by a generic-looking mouth monster, and I find its design to be a pale imitation of John Carpenter's The Thing, rather than a fun homage. Sure as hell doesn't help that, like the note said, you have to stay close to it, as otherwise it'll transform into a boring-looking worm monster that's way faster than you, will kill you super quick, and in the remake, doesn't go back into its normal form between rooms. Now, this is a skill issue on my part. I know a lot of people like Specimen 10, and I only don't because it goes against my run away from everything like a coward playstyle. I know I praised Ben's gameplay, and the things isn't that different, but I don't know, the long hallways combined with having to walk slower was just not fun for me. I still do really enjoy the build up to the specimen, and I think the death screen is cool, but I don't like the specimen. I guess now's a good time to mention the death screens, since Specimen 10 is the only one that killed me. Each specimen has their own unique death screen, and the things is a bunch of flashing images alongside text telling you to give into your animalistic desires, though the flashing binary text on the screen says otherwise, and to use the soul you've been given, and be responsible for your actions. I like this screen a lot, as I interpret the binary to be the player's last semblance of humanity calling out to them, as Specimen 10's parasite reduces the player to nothing more than an animalistic monster. I won't go over the rest of the death screens since we'd be here all day, but of the ones we've seen so far, Specimen 8, 2, and 6 have my favorites. The rest of the 600s were uneventful. I got chased by the thing like 4 times, and I got chased by Ben in the last 10 rooms. Room 700 is the next save point, and now we're in these purple tiled rooms. Nothing changes gameplay wise until room 710, where we enter a fast food restaurant. Okay, I know I said Specimen 7 was the most original earlier, but Specimen 11 might actually be the most original. I found some notes chronicling the experiences of a fast food employee who got a job at the restaurant we're in. This is one of my favorite specimen introductions in the game, and while I'd love to read all the notes to you, I don't want to waste your time. All that matters is this guy got a job, things are weird, like there's a customer who keeps buying a huge amount of food every 10 minutes, and the note guy eventually tries a burger because he doesn't get a proper lunch break, and he sees hallucinations and feels like a lumbering creature is coming after him. So he quits. I'm not really sure why, but reading these notes creeped me out more than any other specimen's introduction. Maybe it's because of how original the concept felt, but I felt more scared of this stupid fast food area than the abandoned school, the Silent Hill area, and the abandoned labs just a moment ago. I do think that overall, Specimen 10's introduction is the best, but Specimen 11's is my favorite. The fast food aesthetic is weird and off-putting, and while I was worried it would be played as a joke, it's not. This really is just a strange, haunted fast food place, complete with another cramped area to explore, this time being a play place. Despite my praise though, it really is hard to take posters that say 100% beef seriously. After entering the freezer and grabbing a key, Specimen 11, the fast food demon, finally appeared. For the sake of simplicity, I'm gonna call him, I don't know, Mickey or something? Mickey here, god that name is hard to take seriously, is actually my second favorite specimen in the game, both design and gameplay wise. Design wise, he's a pretty generic demon, but I still find it a bit creepy and effective, and gameplay wise, this guy's pretty interesting. He's another floating specimen, the fastest one so far, and causes hallucinations of cows to appear on screen, alongside causing the exit door to disappear. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, Specimen 11 is a little bit goofy. He's the only one aside from Specimen 7 to not really be based on anything, as his inspiration is from a Little Big Planet map made by the game's creator, Akuma Kira, and you can kinda tell. I don't find Specimen 11 scary, hence why I called him Mickey earlier. I find him cool. His design is cool, his gameplay is cool, and his theming is kinda goofy, but cool. That's why he's one of my favorite specimens in the game, even though I don't find him to be effective horror-wise. It's just a cool design. That goes for his death screen as well, as when he kills you, you're actually brought into a meat maze, likely a reference to SCP-106's Pocket Dimension, where he waits for you to find him, and then kills you. Aside from Mickey chasing me, and later Goop, nothing interesting happened until room 750, where I got the final password alongside another save points.
Oh, hi. I didn't think you'd make it this far. And you got an axe. Nice. Well, congratulations. You're just about there, I think. Well, I didn't really have a gift ready, so, there you go. Unlimited stamina.
Spooky blesses us with infinite stamina, but we're no longer able to run, so it's not very useful. Like Spooky's other pranks though, this goes away after a few rooms. Aside from this, nothing else interesting happened to me, aside from getting chased by Centipede and Goop again, but this led me into the 800s. I'm just going to skip ahead to the specimen encounter, because room 810 is my favorite in the entire game. It's a mansion within a mansion, but everything feels off. This is explained in one of the notes, where the writer suspects that everything is painted on, and that this is no mansion at all. According to the Cat DOS entry, Specimen 12, the mansion, builds itself around its environment, and it chooses a host to possess. A host I met shortly after the word hide appeared on my screen. Now, when I first entered Specimen 12, I fully thought it would be a Resident Evil reference. I figured the specimen would be a reference to Nemesis, or maybe the zombie dogs or something. But as soon as I saw the prompt hide, I realized what exactly was going on here. The host of the mansion is an old man holding a large scythe, making this a very clear homage to Clock Tower, though the mansion possessing someone is also similar to The Shining. As for why room 810 is my favorite in the game, it's because of the gameplay. The hiding mechanic can get a bit boring, I'll admit, but I did enjoy the switch up from the usual running from specimens. Aside from hiding though, we also have to find some keys in order to unlock the door to 811, and given how large room 810 is, it's easier said than done. I mean, it's still easy. It's never that unclear where you're supposed to go, and after a brief visit to the basement, which is supposedly the specimen's true appearance, I got chased by the old man and made my way out to room 811. Unfortunately, for as good as Specimen 12's mansion form is, the old man is pretty lame. He's painfully easy to avoid, as he's one of the slowest specimens in the game, even with his sprint ability. Plus, his design just isn't scary. I enjoy the Clock Tower and Shining references, but that's the only thing I like about the old man design-wise. He's great in room 810, but his chase afterwards is boring. As much as I like Specimen 12's introduction, I do think its gameplay is done even better in the DLCs, but more on that later. Nothing else interesting happened to me in the rest of the 800s, I just got chased by Nurse and Ben, but that was it. Onto the final 100 rooms, and more importantly, onto the final specimen introduction. After a brief chase with the old man in these dilapidated looking rooms, some of my favorite visually in the whole game, I made it to room 910, which looked like a castle of some sort. I found a note talking about some whales dying in a research facility, and eventually I found a room with a giant whale in a tank, alongside another note, saying that the whales were being eaten alive from the inside out. After this, I found a lantern, which I was definitely supposed to find earlier, and suddenly the reference became very obvious to me. I'll get to that in a moment though. First I had to open a padlock using a code on the notes, which led me into a room where I could lower the water level. I then entered a room where there were boxes floating in water, and after a bit more exploring, I found a mermaid sitting on top of a box. This is the final specimen, Specimen 13, or the Siren as I'll be calling her. Gameplay wise, she's exactly the same as Karenk from Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And that's it. You deal with her by running between boxes, drastically slowing the game down, and you don't even see the specimen's design during the chase. Not that the design is anything all that interesting, it's a pretty generic mermaid design, but still. I will give Specimen 13 this though. The chase theme is great. It's calm and yet creepy, fitting for the slower pace of the chase. Now, if you're lucky, the siren will stop chasing you after about 20 rooms, roughly in room 930. But I was not lucky. I was chased by the siren all the way until room 947, meaning I had to endure almost an extra 20 rooms of slow box gameplay for no reason. I do remember enjoying Siren's gameplay at first. I thought it was a fun change of pace, and like I said a moment ago, I enjoyed the chase music and the atmosphere that was brought with it. But after nearly 20 minutes of the same boring rooms, listening to the same song and dealing with the same monster, I no longer found myself enjoying the gameplay. I still wouldn't say Specimen 13 is bad, as I really did just get unlucky in the chase, but I do think it's one of, if not the worst specimen in the game. A couple rooms later, I found a note from a guy writing stuff like a survival journal, and shortly after that, I got chased by the food demon, a welcome change of pace from the siren, in my opinion. After this was another chase with the centipede, but before I knew it, I was in room 995, the final safe room. The final 5 rooms weren't anything special, though I did get chased by the centipede one final time, and after breaking some chains blocking off the exits, I was free.
Well, you made it. Congratulations, I guess. Well... Oh! So now you must pass one final test to prove your fortitude or dedication or something.
One final door appears, and after entering it, I was brought into this ominous white area.
I'm taking all those logs they keep throwing out, and I'm nailing them together.
Shortly afterwards, a cutscene of Specimen 9 played, showing him morph into his true form. A flayed human. This is the final boss of the game, and he's a pretty easy fight, yet I had fun with it. He attacks with pillars of souls, ominous shadow hands, weird ghouls, and a fireball which you have the dead man's volley back at him. Repeat this a couple times and the boss goes down, but before I move on to the ending, I want to talk a bit about what Specimen 9's deal is. I never went over his normal form, but if you idle in a room for too long, about 2 minutes, or walk down an infinite hallway in a certain room for too long, Specimen 9, the Taker, will come after you, instantly killing you. His red skeletal design reminds me a lot of Red from NES Godzilla, making Specimen 9 the second possible creepypasta reference in this game. Personally, I don't really find Specimen 9 to be all that interesting, especially since I already knew how he worked going into the game, but I do find his boss form interesting. I didn't notice it at the time, but the room we entered right before fighting the boss is labeled 731, and if we click Modify House Layout on the cat dots around 6 times, we can see his true lore page. As the 731 suggests, Specimen 9 was a survivor of Unit 731, a Japanese research facility operating during World War II, which conducted some of the most despicable research on humans the world has ever seen. I'm not going to detail the horrific war crimes committed in Unit 731, because a video about a silly horror game really isn't the place for it, but they committed just about every single atrocity you could think of. While I do think it's maybe a bit out of touch that the final boss of a, need I remind you, Mascot Horror Game is based on actual war crimes, I can't think of a more fitting final boss. At this point, we've seen just about every other kind of horror trope referenced in this game, so the final boss being based upon the horrors of reality is fitting, don't you think? Back to the game. After defeating the final boss, we can get one of 2 endings. Assuming you're like me and didn't use the axe too much, you get the good ending, where you die and become a ghost in Spooky's army, as Spooky vows to take over the world so she can be taken seriously for once. If you do use the axe too much, however, You get the bad ending, where you're turned into what I believe to be the new host of Specimen 12. My reason for thinking this is some notes we can find in both Endless Mode and Room 810, which show that the old man entered the mansion to film it for his YouTube channel, found a sickle in the Dear Lord's forest, and then killed the previous host of Specimen 12. Obviously this led him to become the host we encountered, meaning that giving into violence likely causes us to become the new host. Plus it's mentioned in Dear Lord's Cat DOS entry that he's more effective on violent subjects, and being so violent that you become one of the mansion's specimens would definitely constitute Dear Lord being effective. However, this isn't the true ending. Remember earlier when I said there were 4 game modes you could select? This was all just the first game mode. We still have 3 more to go over, though we'll try to make things a bit quicker since this video is long enough already. Of the game modes left, 2 are DLCs, and both of them are even better than the main game. 1 more in terms of horror, and 1 more in terms of gameplay. But before we get into that, a quick intermission. Endless Mode. That's a game mode that exists. Okay, I'll be honest, I barely played this. From what I did play, it seems fun, and I'll definitely play it more in the future, but I got the gist pretty quickly after 100 rooms. Basically, it's just the mansion game mode, but endless. There's also the twist of a few new specimens, and multiple specimens being able to chase you at the same time. There's a joke enemy based on FNAF, a weird deer anime girl that's just a worse Dear Lord, Lisa from PT, a weird child in a ghost costume that probably isn't a child actually, and a white face from I'm Scared. There's also an upgraded version of Ringu, turning her into a Fatal Frame reference, which is the specimen I encountered in my playthrough. There's also the majority of the DLC monsters present, but seeing as I haven't covered that yet, I'll skip them for now. Overall, Endless Mode is fine, definitely not something I see myself playing a ton, but it's a fun inclusion, and I think the new enemies are mostly good, at least from what I've seen. With Endless Mode out of the way, we can now move on to what I really wanted to talk about, the DLC. There's 2 for us to play, Karamari Hospital and Spooky's Dollhouse, and seeing as they take place right after each other, I think it's only fitting to start with Karamari. Karamari Hospital starts with us in the room 995 elevator, though instead of taking us down 1 floor, it takes us down so far that the room numbers glitch out, eventually disappearing. After walking through some grungy stone rooms, I eventually made it to this room where Spooky appeared.
I don't know how you got all the way down here. I didn't even remember there were rooms down here. Well, good luck.
After another hallway, I was eventually brought down into the titular Karamari Hospital. Now, hospital settings in horror media freak me out. Real hospitals don't, just horror ones do. I bring this up now because Karamari Hospital is the scariest this game ever gets. Not right now though, it's actually pretty calm in this initial state. The music is nice, and although clearly abandoned, the hospital is clean, with the only odd thing being a bloody urinal in the men's restroom. Sounds like a normal men's restroom to me. I continued into the hospital proper, and in one of the rooms I found a note from one of the doctors. The patient has displayed increased depression after being informed of their terminal disease. I prescribed an antidepressant to regulate this, but was later told that I had canceled the prescription. I have no memory of canceling the meds, nor can I find any evidence that my orders were tampered with. This note is one of many we'll find in the hospital, and it does a fantastic job setting up the main antagonist of the DLC, but more on that later. For now, I headed downstairs, into the basement. This area was a lot creepier, containing a weird mass of flesh that I couldn't destroy, as well as some locked doors. There was also the break room, which I could enter, which had another note. It seems we are losing patients due to surgical complications much more often than normal. What have the doctors been doing? Half of these procedures seem completely unnecessary. I know the doctors and surgeons are above me, and probably know many things I don't, but this is getting strange. We'll read more about these strange procedures soon. For now, I picked up the key to the office and headed back upstairs. In the offices, I found more notes from doctors talking about doing strange procedures, like giving a patient hallucinogens and taking their livers for no discernible reason. In the same room mentioning the liver, I found a key for the maintenance room downstairs, so I headed back down. Turning off the generator let me access the electronically sealed doors upstairs, including the second wing of the hospital. The rooms in here are bloody, and one of them even caused the lights to flash while horrible screaming played at me. This room genuinely freaked me out, and I got out of there as soon as possible. In one of these bloody rooms I found a note from the liver guy, again saying something about an other me, one more monstrous than their normal self. I also found this room with a weird red chair, and after sitting in it for a couple minutes, some hallucinations flashed on my screen. I'm pretty sure there's no deeper meaning to this, but I still like this room for how weird it is. After this, I walked down some bloody stairs, and found myself in the morgue. There's a medallion we can pick up here, which we need back in the office, but first, we have to escape a monster. We're given infinite stamina while a body bag chases us, and after escaping a short maze, we're able to head back into the office area. Placing the medallion in the office room allowed me to enter a secret staircase heading down past the basement, and the ambience here is maybe the scariest in the entire game. It's bit-crunched crying and breathing, and it sounds like it's directly behind you. Thankfully it doesn't go on too long, and we're brought into a secret underground laboratory. This place is maze-like, and it contains two monsters. A weird baby head straight out of a Francis Bacon painting, or Silent Hill 2, and another monster I'll get to in a moment. First, I found a minigame on what appears to be a GBA, which was just a weird dating sim with strange dialogue that got progressively creepier, and ended with the girl in it dying. I found the next key on the opposite side of the lab, and while I didn't notice it on my first run through, there's an apparition of someone hanging in this room. After picking up the key and exiting the room, another monster, known as the Hanged Man, started chasing me. I didn't know this at the time, but he works like Ben from the main game, though looking at him doesn't stop his movements. It just slows him down. If you take your eyes off the Hanged Man for even a second, he'll teleport behind you and quickly whittle your health down. So you either need to memorize the path to the exits, or keep your eye on him while you search for it. I didn't do either of these things, so I died on my first attempt, which definitely wasn't helped by the fact that I accidentally entered an infinite hallway. Thankfully, after making sure to memorize the path out, I was able to escape the Hanged Man on my next attempt and head back down into the basement. After opening an extremely bloody door, I was brought into the isolation room, the final area of the DLC. I found some more notes from Nurse Tanaka, who I'd guess was the final one left here, given how many more notes they've left compared to the doctors. But I don't think Tanaka made it out alive. After this, I entered a maze-like area that was relatively easy to escape. I just hugged the right wall and somehow found the correct path with little to no difficulty, and I never even saw the monster chasing me. It wasn't until my second playthrough of the DLC that I actually saw it, a floating, upside-down cow with a strange eyeball hovering above it. This is the ghost cow, and it's heavily implied that it's the reason for the employees of Karamari Hospital going insane. All this talk of other me's and a monster in my head was the ghost cow's possession, and a possible reference to the real-life mad cow disease. This is strongly supported by the death screen, which reads, "Your fear allows me to enter your mind. Your obligation allows me to control your hands. Your reason allows me to break your eyes. Your guilt allows me to loosen your neck. Your expectation allows me to hide the truth. Your tendencies have allowed me to make you." By the way, if you take the first letter of each word after your, it spells forget. Ghost Cow causes people to act violently, and it makes them forget they ever acted in that way. It's the reason why Karamari Hospital became this way, and it might be one of the most powerful and terrifying specimens lore-wise. So it's a shame that gameplay-wise it's really easy to avoid. After making it out of the maze, I entered a room with the exit key, alongside a note, and a ghostly, demonic child talking to me. The note is from a parent to their deceased child, and while I didn't know this at the time, it's about Spooky. Going back to the main game in the arcade room, that broken cabinet I couldn't use was actually a cutscene which showed Spooky's backstory and how she died. One Halloween, she dressed up as the Red Death from Edgar Allan Poe's short story Mask of the Red Death, scared a man with some fireworks, and got shot, bleeding to death. Upon reading the note, I initially thought it was from Spooky's mother, and that the voice I was hearing was also Spooky's mother, but I was wrong on both fronts. I don't know who the demon child in this room is, as it's never elaborated on, but the game makes it pretty clear that this note is from Spooky's father, who we'll learn more about in the next DLC. After this, I made my way out of the hospital, briefly getting attacked by the security guard that I managed to avoid this entire time, and after one more brief interaction with Spooky, the DLC was over. Is what I would say if there wasn't a second ending and a slightly different New Game Plus. I'll go over this quickly, since the main difference is that we get a sword which lets us kill the monsters in the hospital, which is how we get the new ending, and I mostly use this New Game Plus to see everything I had missed. The scare chair from earlier, the ghost cow, the minigame's true ending, and a secret, insta-killing monster hidden down in the lab. If you head down that infinite hallway I mentioned earlier, eventually you'll get killed by a ghostly woman whose death screen reads, "Don't get up before Saturday." It's just Rebecca Black. Moving on to the second ending, all that's different is the demon child says, "Please don't hurt me," and the note confirms that Spooky's father was the one who wrote the ending notes, and it teases what's going to happen in the next DLC. Before I left the hospital for the second time, I entered the deformity wing, which you can only access when you have the exit key, but there's nothing in there. It does look really creepy, having a very fleshy, almost burnt look to it, reminding me of Silent Hill 2's Lakeview Hotel, but that's it. Overall, Karamari Hospital is a great DLC. It's creepy, its focus on more linear exploration is a refreshing change of pace, and it continues the story in an interesting way. I really can't stress enough how much scarier Karamari is compared to the main game. I'm sure it's partially because of my own feelings on hospitals, but the excellent atmosphere the game already had is done even better in this DLC, and its clear Silent Hill inspiration is done fantastically as well. Unfortunately, the DLC is really short, especially on a repeat playthrough, but I still enjoyed my time at Karamari Hospital. The next DLC is called Spooky's Dollhouse, and it picks up right where Karamari left off, with us walking through some stone hallways. This ends pretty quick though, as we're soon brought into the dollhouse, which looks unlike anything else in the entire game. This isn't just a visual thing either. The Dollhouse DLC is so unlike the rest of Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion in almost every aspect, and in the best way possible. It's not nearly as scary as Karamari Hospital, or the main game, but it's a huge improvement in terms of gameplay. Dollhouse's main gimmick is that our health doesn't regenerate automatically anymore, instead requiring us to shake a doll that we find in the main room. According to a note found in that room, there's a soul trapped within the doll that we must train, and the soul is likely of a child. Aside from this doll, we can also see what's interactable, as every interactable object either has an eye or hand symbol that appears above it. While this does make the puzzles a little bit easier, I actually welcome this change, as it makes it clearer what exactly is and isn't a background object. Back to what's actually going on here. I didn't find much aside from another note talking about the director bringing his dead daughter back as a ghost. That is until I found this piano room. This room contained a key for the west wing of the dollhouse, and on my way over there, I encountered some doll enemies. These are husks, a very easy enemy to avoid, the one I still found to be creepy. They make strange clicking noises as they slowly walk towards us, and while their damage is low, they're often found in larger numbers. Thankfully, again, they are easy to avoid since they're really slow, and they're also killable with the axe. While in the West Wing, I also found this tea room where you can recharge the doll. As the note said earlier, shaking the doll too much causes it to be unusable, meaning we can't heal. I only ever had to recharge the doll twice, once due to a scripted loss of energy, but I still think this is a fun gimmick. I'll talk about this more later, but when that scripted loss of energy happens, and I went to go recharge the doll, I had to avoid a couple monsters with less than half of my health left, and it was one of the scariest moments in the entire game. And not entirely because of the creepy atmosphere or anything, just because I was scared of losing progress. I know for some of you that probably doesn't sound like a good thing, but I personally really enjoy the feeling of being scared and losing progress in a horror game. It helps me remember that I'm just playing a game and that I'm trying to have fun. And that's what a game should be, right? I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let's get back to what's going on now. After leaving the tea room, which has one of my favorite songs in the entire game by the way, I made my way to a storage area owned by GL Labs, told you they'd come up again, where we have to set the doll down. This happens a couple times in the Dollhouse DLC, and it's usually a sign of something sinister coming for us. There doesn't seem to be anything here though, just a weird dead doll, and a key for the next area. Oh my god, it's not dead. This is Wormy Charles, the first proper specimen of the Dollhouse. He's a spirit trapped in a doll that's too small for him, and his whole theme is just stretching. His death screen is him using the rack on the player, and his attacks are all him stretching his limbs to impossible lengths. I personally didn't really find Charles to be creepy outside of the initial shock of his appearance, a fact not helped by how easy he is to avoid. After escaping Charles's room, he starts to patrol the West Wing and Northside Studios areas, and though he's easy to avoid since his attacks are slow, he does a decent amount of damage, especially since we can't heal automatically. If you're already low health, and Charles is patrolling the area you need to get to, say, the tea room, he can be a real threat. Remember earlier, when I mentioned trying to recharge the doll at low health while avoiding monsters? That was Wormy Charles. I was avoiding Wormy Charles. After making it back to the main room of the Dollhouse, Spooky appeared and said she was going to check on something. I then went to this room with a clock, and used the key from Charles's room on it, giving us a new puzzle with the clock hands. It has a really easy solution. Just read a note that mentions 5:45 and move the clock hands to that time, but I didn't find the note until after completing the puzzle. I only completed it because I looked up the solution, assuming I wouldn't figure it out on my own, which was the only time I ever did this, and then immediately after I found the note with the solution. Setting the clock to 5:45 allows us to pick up the wire cutters within, which allows us to open up this barbed wire door in the Northside Studios. This takes us to the garden, where we can find a gravestone from Monica, alongside a note. My dear Monica, although it was difficult, I've respected your wishes and let you rest. I miss you every day. I miss you so much. I'm still going to try to save our daughter. I know it's not what you wanted, but I've already gone too far. She's so close. I just have to find a way to keep her here. If it wasn't obvious, this is a note from Spooky's father, and Monica is Spooky's mother. The gravestone says Monica died in 1968, which means Spooky also died sometime in the 60s, which I would have realized sooner if I processed that the note from Karamari mentioned that new Price film, the film being Mask of the Red Death, from 1964. As much as I like the garden area due to how peaceful it is, there's unfortunately nothing more to do here. So I open the door to the left of the gravestone, entering the Great Hall. The Great Hall has a central room with a pedestal, and placing the doll upon it causes an electric gate to appear. Activating this isn't actually necessary to progress for the time being, as both of the side doors are always accessible. The left door eventually brought me to this creepy clown room, where this horrific clown watches from a cage. Every time you look away from him, he changes pose. But that's about it. Despite his genuinely creepy appearance, the clown is actually completely harmless, even after he escapes his cage. But for the clown to escape, we need to go to the other side of the Great Hall, take these doll hands, and then head back to this room with a furnace. Placing the doll hands inside, turning the furnace on, and then turning it back off and reopening it allows us to get the next key, which is for the final area. But before we can head over there, Spooky makes an appearance.
Oh, hey! might want some help. So, I moved all those dolls out of the way.
In order to get these husks out of the way, we need to activate the electric gates, and either try to make a run for it, or kill all the husks. I chose the latter option since there's no penalty for violence here. The final area is located across from the door to the Great Hall, and it's GL Labs. And not just a random facility like the ones in the main game, this is seemingly their main facility. In one of the rooms, I found a note from the lab's director, saying he's going to use a relic from the old world to bring someone back. And at this point you should already know who exactly he's referring to. I also found an arcade machine for the game Doug, which is just a Dig Dug clone. Nothing super interesting there, but this poster with a horse and Live Laugh Love is pretty interesting. Anyway, the next room I went into was this hallway that required me to set the doll down, and shortly after I fell through the floor. Yeah, okay, so I kinda lied about the labs being the final area. I mean, they are. We just have to go through one last area first. This is the root cellar, a super dark area that requires us to find pieces of a pinwheel medallion in order to exit. It's really creepy in here, and the entire time I was in this area, I felt like I was being watched. I felt like there had to be a specimen in here, but there wasn't. It's just you and the ambience. The maze-like structure and slower movement also doesn't help things, and I found it really easy to get lost in here. Like I said a moment ago, we need to find pieces of a medallion to escape. The first was in this room with a strange metal plate on the floor, the second was in a short maze-like area with a doll on some hooks, and the final was inside the sculpture which I think was supposed to jump scare me. But with the pinwheel built, I opened up the locked door, got a keycard, and headed back up to the dollhouse. This put me back at the west wing, where I noticed a hole in the wall, reminding me of the ones present in Silent Hill 4. I, of course, decided to touch it, which took like a fourth of my health that I couldn't regenerate, though thankfully Charles wasn't around. Yet. I headed back down into the labs, got the doll back, and this is when that whole encounter with Wormy Charles happened. The root cellar for some reason causes the doll to go empty, and since I was missing some health, I decided to recharge the doll, and you already know how that went. After my near-death experience by the hands of Charles, I headed back into the labs, and entered the final room. I found one final note from the director, saying that he's figured out how to successfully bring Spooky back, and it requires a nightmare. The very same one that killed Spooky in the first place. Now, this is where the DLC diverges into two different endings. I'll start with the bad ending since it's easier to get, as all we have to do is walk up to this machine and activate it. For some reason my game glitched out the first time I attempted this, so after a quick reset, I properly entered Spooky's dad's nightmare, where we get to use a gun. This is another maze, and we're surrounded by these horrible nightmare soldiers who are actually unable to hurt us. They die in about 2 to 4 hits, and following where they spawn is essential to making it out. After a couple minutes of killing nightmares, I turned a corner and shot Spooky. I then planted the gun on a sleeping homeless man, and saw some text saying, "I will bring you back." It was already pretty clear at this point if you've been paying attention, but Spooky's father, the director of GL Labs, is the one who killed Spooky. He was a war veteran with PTSD, and after Spooky scared him with some fireworks, he accidentally shot and killed his own daughter. This tragic accident led him to create the Dollhouse in order to find a way to bring Spooky back to life, and it likely led to the creation of the mansion as a whole. Before I had time to process what just happened, I got a warning that the facility was going to explode in 35 seconds, and I had to make it out. Thankfully, I already knew where the exit was, since I had seen it on the map earlier, so after a quick run towards it, and a quick killing of one of the specimens from Endless Mode, I entered the tram, and escaped the Dollhouse. Back on the surface, we see the mansion in the distance as it explodes, and the sky turns red. The tortured souls trapped within the mansion are now free, and so are the monsters. The world is doomed. Okay, well that was a bummer. How about the good ending? This one isn't too complicated to get. We just have to put the doll down on this pedestal, enter a room with a ritual circle and a totally not Sega Genesis, and read this note. It tells us to get some candles at the root cellar, so I grab the doll and headed back down. Turns out we can't use the doll down here anyway, because it's too scared. But the root cellar does feel different this time. And that's for good reason, because now, that hooked doll from the first visit is active. It works oppositely from Ben and the Hanged Man, where looking at it actually aggravates it, and you avoid taking damage by not looking at it. Basically, think of the hooked doll as Slender Man. The 3 candles we need are located in the doll's maze, the pinwheel door room, and in a random side room. After getting all 3 candles, I got very briefly chased by the hooked doll, and made it back into the dollhouse proper. With the candles acquired, I made my way back to the ritual room, placed the candles, and turned on the Kira Genesis. I was then given the choice between 3 specimens from the main game, Ben, Dearlord, and Mickey. And since I had the least amount of trouble with Ben in the main game, I chose him. Only issue with that idea is that it's much harder to avoid getting hit by him in these long windy rooms. And again, there's no regenerating health here. So I died. At least I got to see his death screen, which is, pretty unsettling. What the fuck does that mean? Anyway, I next tried Dearlord, which was also a mistake, because now the deer enemies from his intro spawned during the chase. I died even quicker this time, but at least I saw Dearlord's amazing death screen. I'll let it speak for itself. With no options left, I chose Mickey. Despite me remembering him being one of the more difficult specimens, this was much easier than the other 2. I made it through the chase no problem, eventually making it to this room with a weird black soul crystal thing that Mickey got sucked into. With the ritual complete and one of the specimens dead, RIP Mickey, I made my way back into the nightmare room, completed the sequence, and got ready for the good ending. I did also manage to find one final note, this one on the corpse of Spooky's dad, destroying my theory that we were her dad the whole time, but it basically just amounted to, sorry for killing you. After this, the facility started to explode again, and once again I made it out. This time the sky stays blue, instead of turning red, and only the tortured souls were released this time. Spooky is finally reunited with her parents. The horrors of the mansion are gone, and we've made it out alive. And that, my friends, is the end of Spooky's Dollhouse, and Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion as a whole. If it wasn't clear from how long I've been talking about it, I absolutely adore this game. I really have to commend both Akuma Kira and the folks at Albino Moose Games for creating such a great love letter to the horror genre, all the while making the game actually fun. Aside from a few kind of annoying enemies, I never found myself annoyed or bored while playing, especially in the DLCs. Like I said earlier, any monotony this game could suffer from is dealt with by its excellent use of atmosphere, and the randomness of the rooms and which enemies are chasing you makes it less repetitive. In addition, the more puzzle-oriented gameplay in the hospital and Dollhouse are a great change of pace, and the Dollhouse was so good that I would play an entire game with its gameplay. I really wish I could say more about the game, but there's not much more I can say without repeating myself. Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is just good. It does everything it tries to do well, having a great blend of genuine horror and tongue-in-cheek humor, and the gameplay is fun. The only other thing I could try to go over is the story, but it's so minimal that I don't see a point. From what is in the game though, I do enjoy the story. Just like the gameplay, it's simple, but effective. Before I go, I want to take a moment to talk about how I think it's a shame Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion has been somewhat forgotten. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's completely forgotten, as I do see people talk about it every once in a while, but usually only as an example of good mascot horror. That's why I've been focused so much on how this game is a love letter to horror, because I don't consider it to be mascot horror. It could be considered one, depending on your definition, but for me, I feel like it doesn't count. I already compared it to Five Nights at Freddy's earlier, but I really do feel like that's the best comparison. Both Spookies and FNAF started out as genuine attempts at horror games, but while FNAF fell into mascot horror tropes, becoming more about the merchandise and brands rather than the actual horror, Spookies has stayed as a genuine horror game. Is it the scariest game ever? No, not remotely. But it has some scary moments, especially in Karamari, and overall it just feels different than any other mascot horror game I've played or seen. Compared to games like Ban Ban or Poppy's Playtime, or hell, even earlier games like Tattletale, I don't feel like Spookies was made to cash in on FNAF. It was just a similar enough game that released around the same time, and so it got stuck with the mascot horror label. I mean, think about it. Every other mascot horror game either has the mascots as in-universe mascots, or they're so obviously made with merchandise in mind. Spookies does neither of those things, and there's so much more passion and love behind it. Of course, not every mascot horror game, whether you go off the definition of in-universe mascots or not, is bad. My Friendly Neighborhood is a game I've heard great things about, and that game is undoubtedly mascot horror. My entire point here is that I think Spookies isn't a mascot horror game unless you really stretch the definition, and that it has so much more going on. Great ambience, fantastic monster designs that, while not entirely original, are still well made, and some genuinely good scares, especially in the DLC. I won't lie and say Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion is the greatest horror game ever made or anything, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. It's a truly great game, and you can feel the passion behind it while playing, and it's for that reason that I have to respect Spookies. If you can get past the somewhat repetitive gameplay and the cheap, purposefully shitty jump scares, you're left with a genuinely fun game that still manages to be a bit, well, spooky. But anyways, that's going to be all for now. This video's gone on long enough already, but thank you all so much for listening to me talk about a semi-obscure decade-old game for this long. If you want to play Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion for yourself, which I would highly recommend, the original version of the game is free on Steam, and the HD remake goes on sale pretty frequently. I found myself enjoying this game a lot more than I expected, and hopefully you do too. That's all for now though. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and good night.